So the Lead a Generation Conference is a conference designed all around youth pastors and student leaders. And so I've personally been a part of that conference since the very beginning, actually, and started as a fully in-person conference. And then last year was the first, I think that was conference number 7 was last year during COVID, went online and totally blew everything up. Kind of changed around the entire conference format, obviously, because it was online. It had a huge response. They about tripled their attendance, and this is a paid online conference. And so after that, we just kind of made the call and just said, hey, I think this is just always going to be an online conference, because it really fit their model, because they're providing coaching via Zoom and all that kind of stuff. And so the online model really kind of linked in to what the entire Lead a Generation organization is all about. So last year when we did it, we were 2 months into COVID. So depending on, when someone's watching this, that could have been a long time ago, but we were 2 months into COVID. And so we had just kind of started into online church and broadcast and all that kind of stuff. So I thought what we did the first time was amazing, huge stretch from what we had been doing. But really what I just learned is every single second counts in a broadcast. There can't be a dull moment. There can't be a filler moment. And we need to provide something both visually and from just a design and communication perspective, something that every 10 seconds, there's something you wanted to hear, there's something linking you, there's something bringing you back, there's something exciting you. And then personally, I just learned, man, this is a really great moment for us to stretch ourselves. And so that was really going into this year. It was like, okay, we've done a year of online stuff. What would happen if we did like 6 times the amount of that stuff all at the same time? And that was kind of what we got out of the conference. I think probably most of the challenges with a all streaming conference were probably self-inflicted challenges. So if we had just chucked a camera up in front of somebody and played back some videos, it would have been very easy. Instead, we decided to do 6 different locations. We did one of the main sessions on top of the roof of the building that we were broadcasting from. And so when you throw that in with, Skype calls and remotes and multiple hosts and all this kind of stuff, you create a lot of challenges for yourself. So I would say our biggest challenge was just having enough gear that all of those moments were sustainable, and then a moment wasn't going to take a hit because we had to pull a camera somewhere else for the segment before. And we did a little bit of that, but we were really able to alleviate a lot of the huge challenges like that just by having the amount of gear that we needed. The roof was nuts. So that was like, we had thrown some pumpkins off of it prior to this. That was the most. So we went from like one camera and let's chuck a couple pumpkins to like full camera shoot and lighting and band and all that kind of stuff, drones and all sorts of craziness. So I would say some of the big challenges were, power. So we ran a bunch of, tungsten, big Fresnel kind of things. So getting the amount of power needed on the roof. Also RF. So we needed a lot of channels of ears for a band. So a band's not something we're normally doing with a camera location. So this isn't just like, we need one mix for a bunch of people to share. So that was a big challenge. And then just generally weather was kind of up against us. So can we load this in fast enough? Those were probably the 3 big challenges. So when I kind of think back to it, our main panel location, probably the big thing with that was lighting it. So we're very close to a wall. Our cameras are very close to them. We're not in a very tall space. So we really had to find some very specific lights that were going to light that location up really well. The one set we had, it was like a very clean, all white type of set. We needed a ton of lighting to blow out that wall. It's actually 3 pieces. So we needed to blow out the seams as well without killing, the person who's sitting there. And then our main hosting area that we did, we had a bunch of different Pavo tubes on different angles. So the big challenge was just kind of getting all of that oriented correctly and making sure we had the right kind of depth. We actually ended up having to light up the curtain behind it to add depth. So there was a lot of just different challenges there. That whole set actually got revamped the day before because the original look wasn't working for us. So we've been on a journey with Skype. So when we started Skype, we were running IMAX that we were like mirroring the screen onto our switcher using, you know, a 2-box kind of situation, like crop it down, using audio interfaces to send audio back to them. They weren't always even getting a video returned back, so they couldn't always even see who they were talking to. And then also there's an individual talkback mic at each station, so whoever's running it has to like run around and grab a mic. It was a mess. So we just before this conference moved into the new tech, I think it's the TalkShow VS4000. And that was like game changer for us. It went from a huge 8-foot table of iMacs and mics and all sorts of stuff to a very clean solution that we were actually able to bring in the talkback and hear back into our comm system. One person in front of a computer. It was so great, so worth it. Well, probably one of the funnier things was we did a game where we were slapping people with fish, which that's how you know it was a youth conference, and our interns did not realize that we needed to get them descaled, so they were not descaled. And so both the first slaps of each person, they actually cut their faces, but the people who got slapped didn't know that this happened, but on camera, we're watching like blood trickle down their face. So we're like shouting into the IFBs to the host, like, their faces are bleeding, and you can kind of see him react in the video. And afterwards we're like, dude, like, why didn't you do something sooner? And he was like, I don't know what I should have done. Like, what do you do? Like, they're bleeding, you know? Probably the other funny / scary moment was when we did the roof, from the time we started the session up there to the time it ended, it dropped 20 degrees. So when they walked down the roof, there were like puddles of rain and stuff, whatever. It was a little bit cold, but everyone was fine. Whenever they turned around, it's now pitch black, and the entire roof had frozen over and was now a massive sheet of ice. And the loadout still needed to happen. And so that was kind of crazy. Like the mics had like frozen over a little bit on the top. Like it was pretty wild. None of us expected that to happen. So we rented in, I think, I don't remember the number, a lot of Sony FX6s. That was huge. That was like one of the biggest wins for us, was having enough camera rigs that we didn't feel like we had to constantly be shuffling and juggling cameras around sets. That was a really big win. We also had a couple of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras that we used on one of the sets, which was really great to have some of the remote CCU function there. So I kind of alluded to this earlier with one of the challenges we had was lighting and getting some very tight lights that still came off very soft. So we had the Intellytech X100s that we were using, and we had those in some cases 4 feet away from people on a pretty wide living room feeling set. And I can't just speak enough about how clutch those were. It took the set from maybe like a B- C+ to like all the way to like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. So that was a big win there. We also had some Intellytech panels that we used on one of our sets, and that was huge for us as well. We originally had it spec that we were gonna have to do, I think it was like 6 or 7 lights to just blow out our white background we were using. And we were actually able to just throw 2 Intellytech panels, and that was enough. And so that was really huge for us. Both that's way easier, but it also actually allowed us to take that light and then, you know, use it for, you know, hair lights and stuff like that, because we were, you know, maxing out literally every light we had in the building. All of our stream that we did publicly, all of that was done with Resi, and this was really great. So we were using their Prism, the 2-channel encoder, and then we also had a Ray encoder. And so what that allowed us to do is we had our one main stream, and this was coming from the 2-channel, that was on their main, like kind of behind the paywall. That was what was running the entire conference, right? But then we were able to use the Ray encoder to then stream public segments to Facebook at will. And so having that combo, having the 2 and being able to use Resi's dashboard was definitely a huge win inside of the conference for us being able to provide some free moments outside of the paywall to kind of bring people then hopefully into the paywall. It was pretty cool. So Freshtech obviously sponsored the conference, and so really helped us out with rentals, as well as just like load in labor. So first off, just that alone, the conference does not happen, especially at the scale that it did without Freshtech. But then the other crazy thing was just, you know, we've had a really great partnership with Freshtech here at the church for a very long time. So there were a lot of things that Freshtech installed or built for us, maybe even years ago, 5 years ago, that like were clutch saves, you know. So especially with what we did, I keep coming back to the roof just because it was the most ridiculous thing we did. You know, Freshtech had built us a CS50 power distro, you know, years ago. That was what got us all of our power. the RF system that they built for us, that was how we got all the IEMs up there. Just kind of again and again, infrastructure things that may have been here for a very long time were the only reason we were able to do certain things. So I think Freshtech's partnership, not just the technical stuff that they brought the week of, but what they've helped us build over the past 5 years, really, we saw the harvest of that in a lot of ways as we went through the conference, as we went through the load-in as well. One of the things that we got on an analytics front afterwards is that this conference was actually in 29 different countries, which none of us knew until afterwards somehow. So probably one of the big things is now looking and saying, okay, this conference is not just a United States thing. We don't just need to think about time zones in a US perspective, but now we need to think about time zones in a worldwide perspective. So now there's questions of, do we do a 24, 36, 48 hours straight, with some rebroadcasting, but live hosting and stuff like that. And so those are the new things now of how do we make sure that on a global level, even if that's with translations and captioning and all sorts of things. But so that's like the new, crazy thought. And then also, how do you top it? We've set an expectation now. How do you meet that and then try to exceed it in some spots? All of that just sounds exhausting to me right now, but super exciting at the same time.